Hi, everybody. Hi. I'm just going to do a really short channel. It's really late here, but I just finished with some beautiful, beautiful clients and so many activations that came in. I just had to share them. I'm really excited. So we've been talking about for a while now, for the past couple of years, about the our processing and our changing, our integrating to 5D, and how we can change in all moments of how we perceive ourselves, our reality, in new and different ways. I'm just going to shut this noise out there. And so what they were showing me is we each have the potential with all the people that we contract with, whether it be through work or friendships or school or education. We're all the ones that come forward to be and to express and to experience ourselves as the infusion of light into all of our systems. And so one thing that they were inspiring me to provide inspiration to others that are all going through these experiences of shifting from 3 to 4 to 5D. There's so many of us that have been held in different ways, in different timelines, in different threads of obligation, if you will, and letting go of those vibrational stories that hold us in obligation to these vibrational patterns, or what you think you must oblige to. One thing that's been coming up is family debt and physical debt. How we owe banks money and how we owe family money, and all of the things that have happened throughout time that we hold one another to for the obligation of repayment. And so now that we're entering into this 5D experience and how so many people are realigning to their spiritual wholeness and who they are, we can choose, if we so desire, those ones that are already awakened or already consciously aware, to bring our families along with us and inspire higher vibrational conversations about new potentials of oneness and unity through the care and through the forgiveness of debt. And so be open to these communications. We've got a really important portal that's coming up on 7/7. And so set yourself intentions for those of you that are in these experiences and situations. I know so many women feel obligated because they want to try so hard to create this new experience for themselves, to be independent and to be sovereign, but are finding the obligations of debt and the obligations of routines that are now being broken and shaken apart for great reasons. Because there's so much potential for us. This is what the Saint Germain and the masters were showing me. There's so much potential for us to see ourselves in 5D when it comes to something like debt. Because debt is held to the obligation stories, limitations and fears and subjugations of the systems that we're coming from that are no longer there. So it's up to us to now perceive ourselves in a new way as spiritual leaders and masters, to bring our families along with us through these communications and communions at the higher self level. When we are with higher selves, in the higher selves, whether it be sisters and brothers and family members and dads and moms and uncles, and we've taken it through the purity of our intention to have our families help us out in those experiences, and through the goodness and the purity of our heart, and we've done all the work that we can, and we're finding ourselves in goodwill and good heart, to always pay back those debts with good conscience and trustworthy and truthful in those communications and our payments of debt. And those of you that are on those experiences, not the experiences of, taking advantage of people and continually asking for debt and taking advantage of people and not paying, there's experiences of the soul that you absolutely know. I've done as much as I can. I'm finding myself depletion of who I am as a spirit, all of those experiences, and where you're at vibrationally. Then have those conversations with your family to bring it up to a higher level, because what they showed me tonight in this beautiful experience is that the higher selves of the sisters and the brothers that you're connecting with, they all want to be a part of the ride. And oftentimes, because we're shifting into 5D now, some of the ways that we bring them along for this ride is to release our understandings and our limitations and subjugations that we have about debt, because it's no longer valid anymore. We can choose to perceive ourselves that I choose to really release this karma of debt. What are my belief systems around debt? What are my belief systems that I have to feel obligated to be in spiritual, karmic desolation and despair, because I really want to step out and be this spiritual person that I am, but I feel so obligated to debt and routine and experiences that are basically illusory, that other people are holding you expectations of these stories, but it's not really there. It's an illusion. So bring the families along with you in these sacred communions, that we're entering into a higher vibrational experience now. And I know that your higher self wants to be a part of this exploration of expansiveness. So how can we begin to release the karmic debt that is upon everybody in our collective? How can we begin to have opening and high vibrational conversations about, you know, I absolutely want to be a part of this ride for you, and I wouldn't want the karma if somebody is feeling so spiritually, mentally, and emotionally depleted because they're working so hard, 2 and 3 jobs sometimes, or they're doing their spiritual work, or they're doing their light work on, you know, after hours, before hours, because they have to go to a regular job and support their family in other ways. So there's ways that you can bring everybody along on the ride with you and just have everybody begin to open in sacred communion about releasing family and karmic debt. That doesn't have to be there. You can choose to do this at the higher self level if there's family members that you're uncomfortable with having these conversations with. And that's just calling in Saint Germain and the Ascended Masters and all the angels, and just place this over the next 7 days as a beautiful morning intention, just to say that I want to be released from this karmic debt. I've worked really hard. I feel that I've put enough beautiful energy in myself for self-love and self-care to know that I'm worthy to be released of this debt. And you can also do this with the debt that you have within the collective of 3D, if you have like a bank debt, and you know that you're doing the very best that you can to make ends meet, to make sure that the money reaches all the places that it's meant to reach. And the desire within your heart is really to start something new that you haven't had the foundation of having that money come into you, if it's a real big spiritual dream of yours, because many are doing that. They're shifting from the 3D obligation and the stories, but there seems to be other obligations that they're tied to. We always have those conversations with ourselves at night, that I would step forward but I've got this, this, and this. I would do this, but this, this, and this. So start having those conversations about this, this, and this, and start releasing those karmic ties, because they don't really have to be there. And those people that are in your families that those debts are connected with, even if it's a bank, you can ask the bank for forgiveness of debt and just have a conversation with the bank lender, and have conversations with these people in new ways to say, I'm really ready to step into a new vocation, but I haven't built I haven't built the foundation on that yet. And absolutely know that in goodwill, I would love to share services with you so that I can actually start to begin stepping forward in this new path. And be confident and stand and have that spiritual courage, so that you're standing and saying, this is my new me. And I'm hoping that as loving family, we can begin to release these experiences, because your family members don't want to hold that karma in their field anyways. They really don't. Their higher selves don't. You know, if they're in the understanding that it's depleting you spiritually, mentally, emotionally, and physically, nobody wants to carry around that debt. You know, they don't want to be a part of that. At the higher self level. So now we have to start acting and behaving and coming forward in these higher self conversations. It doesn't matter where anybody's at, but you can say that I want to bring you along for this really beautiful spiritual ride. So we've got to start. What are these friction stories within? This is the next beautiful activation that I have to share with you. The conflict stories that are going on within you is about your acceptance. And so suss out the vibrations of this experience about debt, you know, whether it's with a bank, family, whatever it might be. And how can you stand in your higher self experience and call forward, I'd like this to be forgiven because I really want to spend my time and my passion, my excitement doing this. And you only have so much spiritual energy in any one moment, if you will. So for those of you that are light workers and healers and leaders, really be conscious of how much energy you're spending out and what you really need to account for, so that you're not being spiritually depleted. And so that's one thing to keep in track. And so as you're calling up these stories about asking for forgiveness of debt and calling in the angels and say, where am I at with this debt? I've got this amount that's coming into me. I really want to explore this. I want to travel. I want to get a house here. I want to get a little cabin there so I can do this spiritual work and help others in this way. When you're doing those types of communications, always follow it up with, how would this really make me feel and how would it benefit me? Physically, mentally, emotionally, and etherically. That's how you manifest through vibration, because you're linking it to the vibrational spirit that you are, and you want to be spiritually rich, spiritually abundant. I want to feel this way, and I want others to share in this feeling because it's my passion. And if I have a house like this with nature and trees around it, I could offer this vibration and help them connect with the trees and the nature, therefore awakening the greater good. And so when you're connecting as the spiritual experience of who you are in that manifestational vibration, you're having those conversations with you and your teams and your higher self, suss out those energy vibrations that are that negative ego that are attached to those those 3D obligatory stories of beliefs and the patterns that you put with it. Well, my family said they got me out of this debt a couple of years ago, or they helped me pay my school debt, and now I feel obligated because they helped me out of that situation. I constantly feel like I'm sorry for it. You don't have to keep carrying around those karmic burdens. They're not your burdens. You've said your decree of apology. You've said your decree of emotional release. You've allowed yourself to make peace with it and be at one with it, and know that the heavens and all that is in alignment of that forgiveness will be with you in that journey. But they're also saying that when you're calling up those energies and those stories of forgiveness of debt, also know that there's going to be other energies that are tied to it, because remember, it's an entangled story, 3D, and all of those that you come with. And so those vibrational stories might be that you might have a belief that they might not say yes to you for giving that debt. So then where's your worthiness, right? You're worthy to have your debt forgiven. You know what you put in, you know the work that you do, you know your purity of intent to send light, you know your purity of intent to as often as possible return to your center and be light. We're all human, we're all being compressed, if you will, through this galactic gateway, that all of our timelines, as we've talked about before, this is a now moment, all of the timelines you've ever lived are being healed and renewed through your acceptance and your forgiveness of all that you are and everything that comes towards you. To accept it as yours. It's a part of me. I accept it as my oneness, setting my boundaries, and this is how I choose to live my life as me, as love. And so as you're accepting these compression moments, they can get really, really intense. You're not meant to be perfect on every part of your journey, but what you are meant to do as a master is to remember that you're commanding your reality, and to as often as you can return to your heart space and just be light and shine light and be light. And review those beliefs that come forward about such things as 3D to 4D to 5D. How can we release this notion of debt altogether? And really start setting our vibrational communities and our collective and our nations to be completely debt-free, because it's possible. There's many visualizations that you can do about this debt-free experience. And understand what that debt means and how we've carried along in our vibrational collective for eons and why we do. So start having these conversations about what does debt mean to me and how am I being vibrationally indebted to people? And is it really needed and necessary? Because it's really not. When we're entering in 5D, we're not carrying any karma with us whatsoever, whether it be financial, physical, spiritual, emotional, or mental. We're not to be in debt to anyone. That's bondage, that's subjugation. And so respond and move into this higher state of being, that when conversations like that come up, and we have those vibrational threads, which they showed me tonight, this is the next part of the thing. Part of some of my internal struggles and my internal stories was the collective experiences about double standards, and how the social systems and experiences throughout our entire history have been really so much of double standards, and how we've been set these expectations to behave in certain ways. It doesn't matter what side of any story you're looking at subjugation about, there is the double standard in there and how it's being shaken about and broken right now. Those double standards are steeped in everything and all things. Double standards about who can behave in one way and who can't behave in one way, when the standards are put upon everybody to behave in certain moral and ethical values, and yet those that place those morals and ethical values are not upholding them. For instance, the social experiences through criminal justice system, through the governments, through whatever it might be that we are giving our power away to make rules and obligations for us. And yet when we as the citizens are creating free speech for ourselves and wanting to create something that's better and higher in vibration, we're met with infinite levels of red tape and bureaucracies that we can't even have that free speech. And that's a double standard, that we're meant to be free in speech and free in movement and free in liberation. And yet when we do, it's held in suppression, or groups that are saying, well, why is that so different? And why can't we even say those things? And so we're meant to create the awareness of how much double standards are being lifted into our awareness so that we can deal with it. Double standards in all of these ways when it comes to debt and banking systems, and how fair and unfair and just those systems are. And that's okay. So we review it with peace and with the infusion of light of the 5D experience that we are, because we have to accept it all, accepting it all. And these are what they showed me tonight was, which I never connected it to, which is the reptilian energies that we have, because those friction stories is about our safety. And that's the root chakra. I'm safe here. I can be abundant in anything. We're healing those experiences. And so to view all of our experiences about money and debt and safety and all of those experiences, it's the reptilian aspects of who we are. and why I've been going through certain friction stories about myself to say, well, I have the right to have my own freedoms and my liberations, and yet I'm held to a double standard when I really want to do go out and get those freedoms and experiences and explorations because of all the rules and the definitions and the experiences of, you know, the stories, the vibrational stories. There's the double standard about debt and how we hold one another to debt, vibrationally, physically, mentally, or emotionally, and how is debt held over people's head. Debt can be in anything. You know, those that control the purse in the families, if you will, and how that is held in certain subjugations or controls, and how we can begin to rebuild it into a higher vibrational experience where everybody has equal flow and experience of who we are. And there's no double standards. Everyone has equal opportunity to be an equal voice, to be an equal sharing, to be an equal forgiving, and equal repaying, and equal in however the families want to work with it. Because all families at the higher self level would never want anyone to carry any debt, spiritually, vibrationally, mentally, or emotionally. Because you know that when you've got lots of debt hanging over your head, you just feel sick. You know that. And we can't carry that with us in 5D. And so begin to have these conversations. So what the other thing they were showing me is that the higher selves of you and the source and the sisters and the brothers and anybody that you have these vibrational debts with, they're illusions. But when you start to call them into this high vibrational experience of, well, how can we begin to forgive one another of this debt? Whether it's the debt of something that happened emotionally, mentally, something in the family, whatever it might be, or there's debt actually owed, money changing hands. How can you begin to have conversations so that it's just forgiven and lifted off of all parties? And forgiveness is the priority, and the compassion of one another, so that you can all work through the minutia of the puzzle and be debt-free, emotionally bondage and free. Because nobody really has the right to hold anything over anybody. We're a free being of sovereignty. And so these conversations are going to have to come out in some way. And it will be tested in all energies of our social systems. Because there's so much double standards about rules about what we can and cannot do. And yet those that have made those rules are those that are doing the can and cannot do's. And so how is that fair? And yet those that are working so hard to carry light, those that are working so hard to do the right thing, are held to such enormous amounts of blockages. There's just no fairness in it. There's no fairness in it. Those that work so hard 24/7 just to make the ends meet, to pay the bills, or to make something of themselves, and the double standards are rampant everywhere. And this is where we have to shake it up and say, enough. Enough is enough. And do it in the joyous, loving way of fifth dimensional experiences and masters. And you can do so in a way that you can choose to say that I choose to release this, and do your releasing every night when you do your self-care, when you're going into your dream state, and have your teams come in with you, Saint Germain and all of the abundance to angels, and have them come in and say, I want these debts released karmically. And remember, when we say debts, it could be physically, mentally, emotionally, or physically, vibrationally, in monetary experience. I really am aching to have these debts because this is what I really want to become and feel like. I want to be debt free. I want to feel like this so I can be free to move and dance and help others move and dance. So feel into those communions of conversation and really shifting your vibrational perspective of debt and really releasing it all together, because they're vibrational stories. And then again, as you're calling it forward to suss out vibrationally, where are those vibrational stories of your beliefs that those debts will be forgiven? Because they will and they can. And so you're worthy. You're worthy to be absolutely debt-free. You're worthy to know yourself that when you do pay for things and buy things, can you just call back on it so you're not actually charging any credit on anything, and setting those goals for yourself to not be held in obligation to anyone or any one bank. And this is why our whole social systems will be changing. And so that's where the clearing of the root chakra comes up, the safety. And that is the reptilian energy that each and every one of us without exception, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about reptilian energy. And there's very, very high dimensional reptilian energies, thank you, that are working with the Orions, that are here to recorrect. And this came up many years ago when I was in Peru. There's many really, really high vibrations. And when reptilians were first here on the planet, they were very, very high vibrational beings. And so a lot of the misunderstandings about the Awaken community is holding reptilians at very low vibrational understandings. And those were only certain experiences that we held. And that's where we come up with the reptilian safety issue, because those are some of the timelines that each and every one of us are healing. About your safety, what do we hold our understanding about money, and how can we shift it to a 5D perspective? because it's all about spiritual freedom and liberation. It just is. That's sovereignty. Not held to anybody by anything in any way. Nobody holds any power or subjugation mentally, emotionally, physically, energetically. It isn't. It's an illusion. And so those conversations must be had to liberate your soul and your spirit in whatever way is comfortable for you, and do it in a way that's fun and joyful, because everybody's higher self doesn't want to be holding no karma over anybody. You just don't. You don't. You know, if somebody owes you $1,000 and you know that they're struggling and you know that they're doing everything they can to pay you off, how would it be to your highest vibration just to forgive that debt? Then you know that you can, because you will. And it's also setting those boundaries too, because that's not the blanket statement for everybody. Because there are those that continually borrow and continually take advantage of you and continually take from you and continually do those experiences when you absolutely know that those are the ones that absolutely need to have those boundaries set and not return and not lend the money, because there are those stories as well. So again, it's you doing that discernment within who you are so that you're not being taken advantage of it. And again, you're having your spiritual back, because it is about spiritual liberation. And sometimes that liberation is saying no. Sometimes that liberation is enough is enough. You can't take from me, because I want to be spiritually free, and I'm not being held in obligation to being put up with these games of taking all the time or not receiving. And that's spiritual liberation as well. So that spiritual debt goes in many different levels in many different ways. So have those conversations with yourself and your higher self. And so this is so exciting. So as I was going through this incredible, multidimensional experience with Saint Germain about debt and vibrational debt comes in again in many different ways. And everybody's higher self and soul for the collective want to start reviewing this in a fifth dimensional experience and start forgiving it for one another, because it can. And you can ask the schools and you can ask the banks and you can begin having these conversations and sending emails about the forgiveness of debt, because there's lots of programs out there that will just create that forgiveness of debt for you. And what they were showing me is that as I was going through this experience, and I was talking with a client, and at the very same time, I was forgiving. I don't know how this happened, but in the same time that I was talking to this client about this one experience, at the same time, my higher self came in and I accepted the conflict stories that I had been going through personally, and accepting those stories as my own, because I was projecting separation about those conflict niggles of subjugation. And that was, and I was asking my teams, I was saying, what just happened there? Because I had another, this is what they showed me. I don't know if this is for everybody out there, but this is just what happens to me. When you're calling in, and I can just feel it because I'm Christed, and I have, the way I connect with my body and the way I connect with my fields and the way I connect with spirit and my soul is very attuned. So I can feel things that most people can't. And those people are also waking up that they can. I'm just saying that this is how my soul and my teams I've programmed it with myself, because I love the multidimensional experience. I get these little glyphs all over my body, all over. When I call in an aspect of me in my soul's blueprint, my Akash, and I have gone through that process of reflecting, questioning, processing, integrating, and I go through that experience, which I had with a client tonight, which has never happened. And at that same time that we were doing this multidimensional experience, I went in and I forgave that story of that vibrational debt of subjugation. And I said, I want to release this subjugation and karma that's attached to the story. I don't need it anymore. I've learned everything I need to learn from it. I accept it. It's mine. I accept that vibration of subjugation, that there was other timelines where that occurred. And I accept that part of me. And it was a reptilian experience. Of that safety and subjugations that were held in reptilian understandings for our collective. Because earlier today, I was asking my teams and my family, that I was saying, well, why was that experience so intense? And they were saying, because you were clearing it with and for on behalf of your collective, so that you could understand and start rewriting the stories that you've all had about reptilians and your safety, and how you hold so much debt over one another, vibrationally, emotionally, spiritually, through all timelines. And how can you start rewriting it and forgiving it? Because when you accept all of those experiences as you can start to say, well, I wouldn't want to hold anything over anybody. You're free. You're liberated. Go, you're free. And it also too, remember, it's not a blanket statement. it is also part of the collective's lesson to be some of those of us that have come forward to be the voice of the underprivileged, to be the voice of those that have been taken advantage of, to also be the ones that say, there are stories, as my voice is being cleared, there are stories of great unfairness and great imbalance that must have a voice for those that have been taken advantage of unjustly, for those that have continued to be taken from, or business ideas taken, or whatever it might be. There are those experiences where the voices must come forward and speak, and they will be supported by spirit in just the same, because that is also the liberation of the soul. And so again, it depends on what level of your soul's evolution that you're expressing this freedom of debt. You're not going to be held under anybody's debt by not saying something about something that's unfair, because that causes debt for you, and that gives the freedom to those that just keep taking. And that's the double standard that's in everything. And so learn and discern, when is it your time to speak up and be truthful about the unfairness and the unjust, and do it in a peaceful and loving way, and then own that story, right? Because it's not something you're protesting. It's something you're saying, well, this has been unjust. There's been great imbalance about the equality of give and take. And I want to be the voice of fairness, because I don't want to have that debt anymore of being subjugated to continually being taken from, because it is a subjugation. You're a spiritual subjugation, and it's not okay. So you can speak up in that truth and be the fairness of it. And so the other thing was that when I was doing that, in that simultaneous moment, it was so exciting. I had an activation on my arm, and it was like just like that. And that's never happened to me before. Usually I see it the next morning, and I see a new imprint when I've collected in those soul aspects of myself. They're called soul fragment integrations. And those soul fragment integrations, for me, this is just how I've aligned it with my soul. So how everybody else does it, I don't know. So you talk with your souls and your higher self if you want to see your own glyphs. When you call in those soul fragment aspects, to call it in and say, I accept you, I honor you, you're a part of me, and now I can clear that away from my field. You know that you're doing it not only for you, but it's because of the collective that you come with, that you're here to help us heal, transcend, and help offer new experiences. It's 5D. And so that was part of the reptilian thing that all of us have in our DNA, that all of us have safety issues, money issues, and all of these experiences of subjugation, of being in debt to people, slavery, and all of those experiences that were related to many Orion and reptilian energies, as well as many other. Those are the primary ones that we all come with in our DNA and our Kosh. And so I had this huge activation the second, and I was like scratching and going, oh my gosh, what's going on? And then I took a picture of it. So I'll post it tomorrow morning, because I'm sure tomorrow morning it'll look different. And then, so the other thing that they wanted me to say was this other thing, and it's just gonna be really quick. We were talking about trees, and those of you that know all of our classes and our readings, and we're so happy to have you with us. The excitement and the understanding we have as trees. The tree, I had this beautiful vision of the tree, and this tree, this beautiful, beautiful, thick-rooted trunk of a tree, and the tree roots were going down, and the roots and the tendrils were touching the different aspects of soil and water, and then the feet up to the tree trunk and out to the branches. And the metaphor that they were giving me, that Gaia was giving me, was that, and the teams were giving me as well, our planet right now is going through a galactic shifting and a phasing, and there's so many squares in our celestial alignments right now, and those squares create friction. The celestial alignments create those frictions that are called the squares, which means that right the opposite of where we are right now in different celestial alignments, astrological alignments, creates that friction and creates those inner conflict stories about what needs to be resolved, what needs to be accepted, what needs to be honored and owned. And so these squares create the intensities of who are you, what do you exist within, what exists within you, and how can you just relax and love yourself more. And those are those friction stories that no matter how stressful and no matter how pressed we are going through this portal of new galactic space, that compression means that all this now moment of all timelines, remember we're healing and we're correcting timelines that were held in great slavery and subjugation, to always return to our center and be light as often as possible. Because we are human, and we do have those moments where that frustration and those angers and all of the energies that you're being pressed with are just too much for you to process in one moment, because we're accelerating as well. And often too, you're doing clearing sometimes for those that you're threaded with in those entanglements. And you can also choose in every day, if you're finding it's too intense, that you can choose to every day and throughout your day, just disconnect from those that you think that you're connected with emotionally and vibrationally, so that you're not taking on any more energy to clear than you can handle. So you can do that. Just state those intentions throughout your day. You're only taking on your energies to clear. Unless you know you're in the regular practice of helping the collective clear as well, and you're on top of that kind of stuff as an empath. And so these frictions and these squares in our celestial and astrological alignments continue to press on all of our timeline nows from 3 to 5D. We're clearing 51% of our own karma. We cannot clear karma for another. We cannot take on anyone else's responsibilities to help anyone clear their karma. We can be the guidance, and we can say, you know, this is the guidance and this is what I'm sensing intuitively from your teams and your higher self, but what do you think you should do? How can you make you feel right? How can you make you feel more in alignment with your higher self to clear this debt, if you will? And have them suss it out with their spirit, because that's how they become truly self-empowered and self-aware. And because their spirit might say something different. So again, it's not to anyone to say, you know, this is how you clear your karma. You can absolutely stay. Everybody has their own right and free will. I want to release this karma because it's too much for me to carry right now. What can I do? And I don't want to carry anybody else's karma. It's not my burden. So I'm releasing myself from any vibrational story that I feels heavy and dense. I don't need to be a part of it. It's not me. I didn't create the karma. It's not mine. And so know when those threads of compression are coming through, so that you can, in these tense and accelerated times, you can feel those friction stories within you to say, I'm going to be released from this debt. It's not mine. I don't want to feel this way. I get the choice to say, I surrender this karma and this feeling to the surrender of Source Creator to assist in the release of this. And you can do that. But this tree was showing me that in these very accelerated times, when we are in this beautiful celestial astrological square, when so many karmic stories from all of our timelines are now being compressed through this portal of space, that we're now being forced to, more often than not, return to center and be light and just accept it all and transmute it and release it. And so they were showing me this metaphor of the tree. Oftentimes we're so hard on ourselves because we think that, you know, sometimes when you have those really intense experiences, you're so hard on yourself because you feel like you should feel better. Like I should feel lighter. I mean, I've been doing this for so long, and I'm sitting in my light as often as I can, and I'm sending white light to everybody. And you're having these conversations with your team all the time, and then you have a morning where you completely feel thrown off, like I did this morning. And my teams are saying, well, this is why you went through that, is because there was an aspect of your reptilian soul fragment that wanted to be integrated. So you had to accept it and forgive it and understand of why the stories that you're now entangled in through those frustrations of where it's coming from, and what, because remember, everything you're going through right now is connected to any other timelines. And it's something that you're not accepting, something that you're meant to stand in voice of, meant to be in spiritual strength of, or it's your spiritual growth of somehow, some way. In any way, it all means that you need to accept it in some way as a part of you. That's why we create the stories that we do, that are separation, but they're really not. It's just an aspect of you. So this metaphor of the tree was about our understanding that that tree starts out at the seed, and then it begins that story of conflict and that story of catalytic friction. The energies within the seed begin to understand that it's a seed and it needs to grow. It doesn't ask God what it needs to do to grow. It just grows. It just knows it's God. It just grows. It knows that it gets the nourishment from the soil. It feels the light that's coming down from the heavens. It feels the light that's coming around from all parts of it. It feels the energy from the rest of the forest, sending its energy through the collective to say, you can do this, you can do this. That seed begins to grow. And throughout the years, this tree grows. This tree pops through the veil of its seed, and it moves up, and it begins its tendrils, and it begins its stem, and it begins the beauty of all that it becomes as the tree. And this tree in the forest is massive and profound. We think through its initial viewing and perceiving of it that that tree is straight up and down. And this is how often we find ourselves going through this process of ascension. But we're really not. The process of growing and the process of soul growth is not just up and down, as we all know that. Some days you can feel 10 steps ahead and 4 steps back. The process of growth and the tree of it in and of itself, there's so much going on in growth that it will never ever be just straight up and down. It just won't. Because you're growing multidimensionally on all dimensions in all ways, that tree is growing through the growth of the rings within the trunk as it's pressing out and creating new bark, that it's got this new branch that's coming out over here, and it's got leaves that are coming out, and then another branch over here, it's got leaves and it's coming out, and then the roots are going deeper and wider. You are this essence of spirits And this is a really profound story. So ponder on this because it's really profound. The tree in and of itself never grows just straight up. And as often as most of us, we're so in awe when we see Gaia and we see these weird, I remember when we were traveling, so many of these weird, really incredible trees that don't ever just be straight up. They're like curved and they're around things and they're in buildings and they're around buildings. Trees just do what they do to grow in the way they're meant to grow. Oftentimes when you're going through really challenging times, you're meant to grow out and reach out because you're meant to touch people that actually need to feel your light and to be your light. And sometimes that means you're going within the navigation of a lot of density. And sometimes creating those stories and calling those stories in is what's needed so that your light can help others see that there are other ways that they can navigate really dense energy and really dense issues and really dense circumstances. And therefore you're needing to reach out in different ways. And that's the aura of who you are as the Christ consciousness. You're growing from within who you are as light and out who you are as light. And that tree wants to grow in whatever ways that Source says you're a seed and you're meant to be growing in all ways. So don't hold yourself captive to thinking that your growth is only up and down, because it's not. That tree wants to be rich and it wants to be full. And you're reaching out many, many dimensions. We're spanning ourselves as souls in infinite number of ways and projections that our soul wants to touch and help people along the process of exploration of who we are as spirit. And the expression of a tree is infinite. We all know that. I've taken so many pictures of trees over the years, and the energies and the faces and the symbolisms that arise on trees and that Gaia offers us through trees, the experience of trees, the love of trees, and how the trees are growing in their own unique way, and it's never really straight up. That's our perspective of it, because that's how we see it, it's from down to up. But that's linear as well. That tree is growing in a multidimensional way. As soon as it bursts the veil of that seed, it's growing in a multidimensional way, because it senses itself as a multidimensional experience, that that seed has purpose, and it will grow in whatever way that it's meant to, wherever it is meant to grow. Because oftentimes it might have obstacles around the tree that tree must then grow out in a different way, and it will. We've all seen it. Trees growing around obstacles, trees growing in and out. So feel your momentum of fluidity as who you are as Ascension. And this really woke me up to something new, is that be okay with where you are. Be okay with energies and anything that is before you, and know that your light can be a part of that new story, and just harmonize with it and take it to a new frequency. And that is the metaphor of how that tree can be in anything. It can grow around what you know as an obstacle and just be light with it, because your light is so fluid that you can adapt, because you're understanding what it is to always return to center. There's never going to be a wrong, because you're a soul doing this for the first time. You'll have the guidance from your higher self, and there will be those really intense moments where you're just frustrated, because that's a human experience as well. And so your branch might just go out here for a little bit, and then you're always going to return to center and say, I'm just going to send this part of me light, because it needed to know that it could be okay just to be frustrated, and just know that you're still growing. You're still reaching out to creation and expressing who you are as spirit. You're allowing yourself to accept all that you are as spirit, allowing yourself to accept the point where, yeah, it's okay to be frustrated. Your teams are going to walk you through this. You're never alone. And that sometimes when you do get those really celebratory moments, because you have been the voice for many that have been, taken advantage of or used or not heard, and you've been that voice for so many, you will have those moments as the tree of who you are, that you've seen yourself grow. And that's that life summation that we often talk about, that you're seeing yourself grow from the seed that Spirit said and knew of you. Believe in yourself, even if nobody else does, and stand tall, even if nobody else wants you to, and speak, even if it shakes, because there's others that need to hear and be honored and be blessed by your spiritual spirit of passion and grace and truth and light and potential of humanity and a better, beautiful earth that we live in symbiosis with. And there's so many lessons to learn about who we are, and how Ascension and where we're meant to go is never just straight up. We're meant to expand and explore all that we are as light, and to touch as many people and as many experiences as earth, and beautiful experiences of love of who we are. And we're meant to transmute in as many ways as we're meant to transmute. And sometimes we won't understand it. Sometimes we'll just want to feel that transgression or that frustration. And then we return to center and go, okay, well, that didn't feel good. What was that about, Spirit? And Spirit will say, you just cleared something for the collective, and it was a rooted issue about fear and finance and where things are going. And You're doing your own connecting and your own integrating of a soul aspect that wanted to hear from you, that said, yes, I accept myself in that story, and I'm not going to hold anybody in subjugation. You know, and then be okay discerning that, no, I'm not going to be taken from anymore. And this is where I stand on this, because I do deserve to receive. I do just have my work to be, you know, paramount for all the work and the time and the effort I put into it. Spirit knows. And Spirit will always bless you in whatever way you need to grow. And that's why Spirit said, if you are the tree of growth, and it can go in an infinite number of directions. Remember, we're creating the 5D tree of life now. And it is all about love and light and truth for you first. That as you're understanding this, and if there is an obstacle placed in your way, that you can still grow around it. It can still be its path, and it can have whatever expression that it needs to have for its soul growth. You don't need to go over it, or you don't need to push it out of the way. You're still in one with it. So that is the lesson of oneness. You can grow around it and take that lesson as a part of you and create a new branch. Create a new tree that goes up like this. Create a new, you know, the trunk that goes around like that. You can still have your essence be a part of the story, no matter what vibrational timeline you're tapping into. Know that you are an infinite, flowing, beautiful experience of source. You are Christ consciousness. And your growth can be anything. And you choose to say, okay, that was tough. I'm going to return to center now. I honor all aspects of me. I accept myself. I get that story of subjugation where I held myself in limiting power. I'm reclaiming my power now. And I'm releasing that story. And as soon as I do, I forgive it and I send blessings to it all the way, because I remember those timelines where maybe I played that part of the role. And then I had that glyph instantly, just like that. And that was so amazing, because it all happened. I'm clearing right now. It all happened while I was talking to a client that also was going through something similar. And so this is how we're changing and we're growing. And the trees teach us so much. It's such a beautiful metaphor. So just ponder into it. Ponder into what we thought and what we perceive sometimes just seems so linear and so limited, because it's really not. That tree is a multidimensional experience that's showing us that our growth from here on out, Spirit and Source will want you, God will want you to test who you are as love, because you are so immense in love. You are so great and capable in love and being compassionate, that anything before you is just a beautiful, flexible navigation of love. And you can grow around it. And you can see the love and the oneness within it. And you can allow the tree of all that you are to bless it with new light and new love and new breath, and bring it to a new understanding of who you are and who all is. And just trust your process, trust the path. Anything that is before you that you see or feel as that conflict inner niggle, it's because you're meant to stand and face it and own it and honor it as a part of your oneness, and to know that it's a part of your growth. And there's always, 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 without question, there is always going to be a really important morsel and a seed that will allow you to deepen your oneness and deepen the love of you. And it's just going to be so amazing, because you have so much depth. You are like, you're a master. So honor it and have those really uncomfortable conversations that take you from understanding debt in 3D. And debt, again, can be anything, and saying, well, how can I really come up with a new inspiration? So over the next little while, as we're entering this new gateway of 7/7, have these conversations and these inspirations with your teams and your higher self. Say, how can I start forgiving my debt? How can I start forgiving the debt that I think I'm owed, or the things that maybe I can forgive someone on their debt, because I really want to be free of this, free of that vibrational tendril that you can really forgive and let go, and really forgive and let go of others. And again, discern when it's time for you to say, no, no more taking advantage of me, vibrationally, mentally, emotionally, or financially. And just know that you're a spirit, and you can do that, navigating the energy in grace, in love, in compassion, because it's all going to be an acceptance of some part of your soul aspect. It just is. It cannot not be. That's why we're all manifesting the stories that we do, because we can take it to a higher vibrational story now. And it's all about acceptance. A respecting of one another and acceptance. And that's when all of the games that are let go, the games of taking and those games of lack of integrity and lack of truth, and to let go and just speak in that honesty of the higher self. Because that's what your higher selves are doing. They're showing me right now that all of the higher selves, no matter how many, everybody's going through this, because everyone's going through ascension. the stories and the challenges that you have within your inner circle, whether it's a work circle, friendship circle, family circle, you're having these conflicts, especially at these squares, these astrological squares, because they're increasing the intensity of coming together and facing it. That's what the squares do. It creates so much tension inside, and it creates so much compression inside that whatever is left unresolved must be faced. Must be faced. And so to do that, facing it at the higher self level, and know that you can both and all grow from a new perspective of higher self being in the oneness. Because your higher selves are showing you, you guys need to face this. The higher selves are saying, no, you cannot escape this story. You cannot go the short route. You cannot take a pill for it. You cannot say, I'm just going to forget about that. It needs to be faced so that that karmic debt can be cleared and resolved. Cannot take it into 5D. So you need to face those fears. You need to face the discomfort. You need to face what you call debt. And really shake it up and say, you don't have to carry it. Choose as a sovereign soul, I don't have to carry that debt, and I want to release others of their karmic debt with me. We have that divine free will and choice, and the spirit will support us in every way. Spirit does absolutely not want us to carry any of that debt. None of it. And how can we come up with creative systems in our socio-altruistic experience to also do so? Because there's so many experiences that we can do. And there's many visualizations that you can do. So use this portal right now. And we're so excited we can offer it to you in these new vibrational ways, because I was so happy they brought it through to me in one of my sessions tonight. So I'm so happy to offer it forward. And I love you always so much. And our donation links are below. Anybody that wants to join us on a class and personal sessions and the hydromancy healing that we're just now offering, the information is on our Facebook. And we're going to be having our website up in a couple of days as well. The hydromancy healing sessions are in alignment with the full moon and new moons. And you can book them in a session of 1 or 4. They're the same pricing as my package of private sessions. So I'm happy and blessed for all of you that have booked and shared your time with me, because again, I come up with these beautiful experiences through our sacred communion, because those portals are open through the sacredness of our connections. And it's just, again, just expressing and exploring who we are as sacred children, to be new. And then all things in between will just flow to you. That's just the sacredness of the law of one. So we thank you, dear lighter ones. We love you, and ponder about what we understand to be about debt. How can we start having these higher vibrational communications and conversations? And how can we be this beautiful tree of life? And how can we own and honor all of these stories that are within our collective right now about the double standards? And look up double standards, and you'll see how double standards fit into your life. And if there are any double standards, what are they, and how can you start reviewing them and transmuting them in a very beautiful and elegant and very powerfully spiritual way, that you're being courageous in who you are as spirit, with grace and with gentleness and compassion, and coming up with really brilliant, intelligent ideas, because they're saying that many of you are so intelligent and so wise that we're returning to the direct route to spirit in all of our social engagements, which means that we don't have to have all of these infinite little bureaucratic, pathways where the A to the Z to the client and the customer are met through these infinite pathways of mess and muddle. That we can just go to spirit and have a much direct route to have whatever the collective needs be served. So we're honoring that, and this is where spirit will always align you. Direct route to spirit will always align you with the inspirations that you need, because your inspirations as spirit, your gifts are unique to you, and you're meant to offer them in your unique way. And they will be needed in the environment, in the social systems. Each and every person has their unique gifts that they're meant to offer straight with spirit, your alignment with you, and how you offer that to the collective. So just know that it's only you and spirit. So your unique gifts, your skills, your vocation, your interests, your excitements as the sacred child is unique to you. And spirit, your teams, your higher self, your soul's blueprint, you are activated through your DNA. You have all that you need. Your codes were put there before you were brought here. You're constantly being updated with new codes. Your excitements to explore who you are, your excitements to express who you are. The plan for humanity is constantly changing. And so to be in your mentorship of you, with you, your guidance with you, you get to constantly direct your ship to say, I'd like a code in this, I'd like a download of this, because I'm really excited to explore this. And you and your teams can always make sure that you're pressing out and evolving, never to sacrifice your light or your movement for anything or anyone. That's subjugation and the double standards that we're talking about. It's all about subjugation, and we're releasing those experiences. Most of them will be linked to the reptilian and the Orion star systems, and also they're steeped with infinite number of earth timelines as well, to really release and let go and create oneness. So we're so happy and we're delighted to be with you. And all of our links are below if you want to send me an email about the hydromancy healing and activations. And there's really, really powerful and beautiful. We want to thank you, all of those that have been a part of our classes too. So our next one's on Saturday. And we love to commune and talk with you. Any notes that you want to put below, we love hearing from you and connecting with you as our sacred circle to connect and expand who we are as Christic. And take everything up to that new higher vibrational level, because you are. Just know yourself when you wake up, set that intention. I am my higher self today. And I'm going to align as my higher self in thought, in word, in deed. And anytime I find myself off center, I'm just going to return to center with breath. And I'm just going to know that I do grow an infinite number of ways, and it's not always going to be straight up, and it's not always going to be perfect. So I'm going to release all those judgments I have about myself to be, and go through this process in any certain way, because I've never been here before. So I'm going to give myself a break. And just know that you're always loved. You're always, always, always loved. God loves you. Spirit loves you. Thank you, dear lighter ones. Bye.